Well, thank you so much for helping my
Of
project.
course.
Could you say a little bit about yourself?
Yes, my name is Alex. I am an ISO flight controller at NASA's Johnson Space Center for the International Space Station program.
And what got you interested in space?
I think when I was little in fifth grade, I came to Johnson Space Center, actually to the museum on a field trip with school. And before that, my dad used to put on NASA TV all the time. We watched space shuttle launches together, and he is a biochemist by education in Mexico. And he would just tell me little things here and there about space, and he would be like, "Look, the rocket's launching, the astronauts," and I would be like, "What do the astronauts do?" And he's like, "They go to space," and I was like, "Well, that sounds cool." So I did the field trip here, and I was like, "This is the coolest thing ever." They had a really big playground for the children when you walked in. I don't think they have it like they used to anymore, and I liked the whole thing. But then going to college right before college in the summer, I read Cosmos by Carl Sagan, and I was like, okay, I'm sort of understanding it a little bit more now. And yeah, I studied physics. I worked in an astrophysics lab for a little bit, and at one point, I thought, maybe it's possible for me to do it. And then I found a job posting that said you could train astronauts, and I was like, that's sick. Let's do that. And somehow I got the job, so I'm here.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Whenever you came here, did you know you'd be working in mission control?
Yes, yeah. I got hired for as an inventory and stowage officer, and during the interview process, I learned that like they support console, they work in mission control. It takes about a year and a half, 2 years to get your certification, and I was like, well, I'm down. This is almost like more school after school with more office work involved, but there's been really cool things that I've been able to do because of it, so I like it.
Now, I ask everybody this, and I realize it's probably pointless, but did you know that NASA's planning to send astronauts back to the moon?
Wait, really?
Yeah. They are. It's real.
Yeah, we're working a lot in my group for that.
And what do you think about it?
I love it. I think it's one of those things where people would be like, why are we going back to the moon? And if you look at it in the really big picture, it's like it's cool. First of all, it's awesome. It's exploration, but to answer those really big questions and get to the moon, you have to answer a lot of little questions, and people don't realize that it's those little questions that always give back to the people of the world. So space shuttle, they needed a computer that moved, so they made the laptop, and the astronauts are having a lot of pain when they were re-entering, so they made a material that is now used in beds. The
memory foam?
Yeah, memory foam was used. So little problems that we can solve trying to find the answer to the big questions are what I'm most excited for.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
A lot of people I talk to are like, why are we going back to the moon? Haven't we already done that before? Mm-hmm. Don't we have problems here on Earth? I was just wondering, whenever you talk to people like that,
yeah.
How do you approach it?
Well, it really, the way I approach it depends on who I'm talking to. If I'm talking to a doctor who asks me the same things, well, I'm like, well, again, going back to those small questions that we get to answer, with the new medical and technological advances we've been able to do throughout the decades, how can we maybe support life in the moon or another planet, or maybe even in a compromised Earth where something goes wrong and we all have to live in a weird environment in some silo at some point. We get to experiment and test all of that in those big journeys. If I'm talking to an engineer, it's, well, do you want to test your new technology and your new designs in a new environment? Do you want to go back to the moon to be able to think about what kind of benefits that would bring to your own research and to your own design, and what new problems arise that you can answer that you can apply to Earth?
That's wonderful. I guess you mentioned Silo. Have you seen the movie?
Yeah.
Or
not
read
the
the
movie.
book?
I've watched the TV show.
The TV
yeah,
show,
yeah.
Apple TV?
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah.
Love it.
It's kind of you should read the books, or listen to the books at least. how the silos ended up is really kind of interesting story. So, but that's a neat thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So whenever you think about the future of humanity, if you think out like 200 years, what does it look like to you?
Hopefully less divided and less aggressive. Hopefully at one point there's more of a realization that we're all in one place together and we need each other to survive, and that our differences are not what we should fight about, but we should, look for when we come together as a team to solve issues instead of, having one single idea of how things should work. Putting them all together is usually the right answer. I think if we go back to the moon, we can work on that. It's not going to solve everything, obviously, but it's going to help bring us back to back to the table of let's put everything together and everyone that we know and see what we can do. The Artemis Accords are a great thing that are being worked on, and there's a lot of countries involved, which is great. But what I love most about it is that people are, reserving their seat on the table because they want to be involved in a great, beautiful project like going to the moon is. And, again, that's like solving another one of those small issues. If we're all together and in the same table trying to solve how to go back to the moon together, we can solve a lot of other issues here on Earth that way.
That's a good point. Yeah, and it's really interesting, whenever we landed there the first time, we said for all mankind, but it was like completely American project.
Yeah.
And now at this time, we're sending the first Canadian around the moon, and Europe is making the service module, and Japan's making some surface, mobility stuff. So it's kind of neat. But do you think in 200 years we have people living on other planets?
Maybe, but I would hope yes. If anything, if they're not living there yet, I hope that we know how to live there. Yeah.
And if you could, would you take a trip to space?
Yeah, but I wouldn't make it too long.
Like just to orbit or suborbital?
I've always said that max 3 weeks.
Max. So you would go to the moon and back in like a week.
Yeah.
That
Yeah. Now, if I had my fiance going with me, and maybe I'll extend it a little bit longer, but I'm homesick.
I mean, it would be having your honeymoon on the moon would definitely be.
It's just called honey at that point.
It's just honey.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's honeymoon squared.
Honeymoon squared. I think I like that better.
Well, Alex, that's pretty much all the questions I had for you. Did you have any questions for me, or anything that you think people looking back on this 200 years from now would be interested in seeing?
What do you think the future is going to look like in 200 years?
Well, I think a lot of it depends upon how many people are convinced that we can have a positive future and that it's worth working towards. But in 200 years, I see, we have people on the moon, we have people on Mars, we have like these big orbital facilities. We've sent probes to other stars. We're planning about sending, generation ships or other kind of vessels with people on it to other stars. We basically take the kind of like the story of Noah and play that forward like thousands of times, and and we plant the seeds that in thousands of years will result in having a universe that's completely teeming with life.
Yeah.
And I think it'd be amazing.
Yeah. What do you think we need to do in the next 50 years to do that?
Lower the cost of access to orbit.
Yeah.
I think Starship's going to make that happen. I think it's going to be like day and night. If Starship is successful and the cost of getting stuff to orbit plummets like, several orders of magnitude.
Yeah.
And the frequency goes way up. I think it just open up the door. It'd be like the internet or, I think we need to figure out how to make kind of closed loop systems. I mean, I don't know if you've noticed, but I live on the north side of town, so I drive through Houston a lot, and I see lots of like landfills. And you're going to come back in 50 years, and you won't be able to tell the difference between the topography of Houston and Mexico City. We'll both be in like mountains. The only difference is ours would be man-made. So I think we need to figure out some way to make it so that our waste becomes the inputs to the things that we make. And that's technology we need for space. That's technology we need to kind of live down here on Earth. You know, I mean, how cool would it be if instead of throwing something away, you put it into this device that broke it down and used it to make new stuff?
Yeah.
And it just, endless loop. So I think we need that. I think people should start growing their own food, but in like an automated, predictable way.
Yeah.
Because we'll need that too. So that's what I think. I think we need more people solving problems instead of talking about problems.
Yeah.
The problem solvers instead of the problem talkers.
Yeah. I agree with that.
So even if just like if everybody solved one problem, that would be 8 billion problems solved.
And share how they solved it.
And shared how they solved it. Yeah. And the internet allows for you to do that. You just put it online and boom, 8 billion other people can know about it.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Perfect.
It's exciting times. Well, again, thank you so much for participating in my project, and I thank the filmer for filming it.
Yeah.
Yes.